The same people responsible for this inept vaccine rollout are the same people that call themselves pro-life. The Donald Trump administration set a goal of vaccinating 20 million people by the end of 2020. Unfortunately, the results have been that fewer than 3 million people have been inoculated from COVID. The Guardian reports, quote, "Now U.S. distribution of the vaccine is being routinely described as chaos, with criticism that inept officials are botching efforts. More than 10,000 people have died in the U.S. in the last 3 days of 2020 alone, to bring the national death toll close to 350,000 so far, including the worst 24-hour death toll of the whole pandemic, when more than 3,700 people died last Wednesday, according to Johns Hopkins University data. So vaccines are the big hope for fighting the outbreak, but experts are warning that hundreds of thousands of more deaths are possible if the inoculation process doesn't get quickly and solidly on track. At our current pace, it'll take 10 years for everyone to be vaccinated. There is no excuse for not being better. I thought Trump was going to make America great again. This isn't great. This is pathetic. This makes us look weak as a country. And the world is looking at this, guaranteed, as being a major sign that America is declining. It's appalling that we still don't have a national plan. Those Bob Woodward tapes show that Trump knew that COVID was deadly serious a year ago, and we still don't have a national plan. The Guardian continues, quote, "Basically, the federal government is botching the vaccine rollout," said Ashish Jha, dean of Brown University's School of Public Health. "They thought their job ends when the vaccine arrives in the states, and there's really no well-delineated plan. What America is suffering through is the consequence of incompetence in federal leadership. The entire pandemic has been marred by a group of people, not just Donald Trump, who don't understand how things work and can't get something to work effectively. It's so bad, vaccines are actually spoiling because they have to be kept in super cold, sub-zero temperatures. And the Trump administration's incompetence is going to cause millions of doses of vaccines to go bad. That's money just being burned. They're actually screwing up, giving the vaccine to healthcare workers and people in nursing homes. I would think that those are some of the easiest people to get the vaccine to. How many people is the Trump administration going to kill with this incompetence? But it's more than just ineptitude. It's more than just one idiot's inability to distribute a vaccine in the 21st century. The point I'm trying to make here is that Trump is not an anomaly. That this is the Republican ideology of government bad no matter what, playing itself out. Unfortunately, Republicans, when they talk about small government, what they really mean is getting rid of regulations that protect us from corporate greed and pollution. It means getting rid of the minimum wage. Small government to them means allowing big pharma to price gouge us on medication, and giant tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. Small government should mean that the government isn't interfering with your private life. I believe, and every lefty I've ever met believes, that the government shouldn't be telling a woman what she can and can't do with her body, whom you can or can't marry, what substances you can or can't put in your body. Small government should also mean that the government can't spy on us 24/7. It means that the government shouldn't be wasting trillions of dollars on stupid wars and nuclear weapons. One thing I've noticed about the left is that outcomes are what really matter. And that's just not the case with the right wing, at least here in America. Because what I notice is that lefties often look to other countries, such as France, Denmark, Germany, and see that on, for example, healthcare or the social safety net, that their progressive policies lead to a healthier, more prosperous society. But you really don't have to go outside of America. The history of our country shows so clearly what works and what doesn't work. And one of the trends is that the Republican version of small government always leads to greater inequality. It always leads to working people getting shafted. There's something called the golden age of the American middle class. It started in the 1930s, and it lasted through the 1970s. It kicked off when Franklin Roosevelt ushered in the New Deal in the 1930s under the Great Depression. And what the New Deal was is The government spent, relative to the population and in today's dollars, spent $2 trillion putting people back to work during the Great Depression. Building roads, schools, hospitals, bridges, electrifying rural America. And what it did was it changed the class dynamic in America. For the first 150 years in American history, there were the very wealthy, there was a small group of merchants, lawyers, other professional class people that lived well, and then there was the other 90% of the population, which was working poor. That changed when the government started implementing minimum wage laws, worker protections, regulations on banks. That trend ended in the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party, with the help, unfortunately, of congressional Democrats, when they started deregulating the banks, deregulating corporations, signing free trade deals. In the 40 years since that paradigm started, wages have stagnated, and there has been a giant redistribution of wealth from working people up to the very richest. Unfortunately for us, the Republican big money donors want them to break government, because government regulation protects us from their greed. That's the big government that Republicans are talking about. So when we have a national emergency, when we need a federal plan, government can't execute, especially when there's somebody who represents the government bad ideology administering it all. Without computers, the Great Society programs of the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson nearly cut poverty in half in just 5 years. That's the power of progressive policy. And now the government can't even distribute a fucking vaccine? It's because ultimately the goal of right-wing politicians isn't to make life in America as good as possible. Their goal is to make government not work for us. Because ultimately, that's what helps their billionaire and corporate donors. This is the same party and the same ideology that botched the federal response to Hurricane Katrina and to the AIDS crisis. If I can hammer home 2 points, it's that the incompetence of the Trump administration will kill people by not being able to distribute this vaccine. But the second point is that Trump isn't some anomaly. It's not strictly because of his stupidity. It's the ideology. People who only care about clinging onto their power, they don't give a shit if incompetence kills people, especially if it just kills us peasants. There are old people right now waiting overnight in parking lots in the cold to get this vaccine. These are the results of a right-wing government implementing government-bad ideology. Thank you to everyone that makes it to the end of my videos. Support independent media by liking and sharing this video and by clicking subscribe. This is Alien Perspective. Thanks for watching.